Namaskar. Hello and welcome to 𝙒𝙧𝙤𝙪 channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. I have for the first time on 𝙒𝙧𝙤𝙪 channel Congressman Khanna gracing our channel, and let's welcome Congressman Khanna. Namaskar and welcome to 𝙒𝙧𝙤𝙪 channel.
नमस्कार, पर मैं हिंदी में नहीं बोलूंगा, सिर्फ इंग्लिश में.
That's good enough, Congressman Ro. It is wonderful to hear you speak Hindi. Congressman Ro, you have done a lot of work, and I understand that we have a time constraint today, so I'm going to be quick with my questions. First off, the US-India relationship. You've done a lot of work in the backdrop, and perhaps you can bring up to speed on the various initiatives that you're working on, continuing, like, for example, the CHIPS Act and so on and so forth. Just take it away, sir.
Well, the most important thing is I'm the co-chair of the US-India caucus, and under my leadership, the caucus has more members than it ever has in history. We have over 120 members. I've set a goal to get to 200 members. That shows the growing support for the US-India relationship. I passed my amendment to block any sanctions on India for CAATSA sanctions, and that passed overwhelmingly in the House of Representatives. And I said, while we need the U.S. and India to have a closer defense cooperation, we can't be sanctioning India for legacy relationships with Russia. I have introduced legislation to make India a non-NATO partner that would again strengthen the defense cooperation and technology cooperation. We have been working on a number of issues to improve academic research, clean tech research and issues. And, when I'm in India, which I'll be coming to soon, and the net trip will be announced shortly, a bipartisan delegation. I'm looking forward to being in Hyderabad, in Mumbai, and in Delhi, and really deepening the ties.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, you've done a lot of work. You do a lot of drafting of bills. In fact, I think last year you did 8 bills, if I'm not wrong. Where do you get the time for that? I mean, congressmen, congresswomen, these days with a 2-year election cycle, you folks are in constant election mode. Where do you find the time and energy to do all that stuff?
Well, I've got a great district, Silicon Valley. It's an amazing district. I'm very proud that I passed and led the CHIPS Act that brought funding for bringing semiconductor manufacturing back to the United States. As you noted, I've passed 7 bills in my time in Congress, and that's a very significant record for 7 years. Many members of Congress go 10 years without passing a bill, but that's because a lot of people want to work with someone from Silicon Valley. It's a great district. I work across the aisle. I try to be effective. We've done things to help veterans. We've done things to improve the technology of government. We've done a bill to stop the war in Yemen, and I'll continue to be very active.
Thank you so much, Congressman Ro. Now I will come to a more specific instance. In the previous session of Congress, you were co-sponsoring HR 1630, which calls for which recognizes the genocide that took place of Hindus in 1971 in what is now called as Bangladesh. Walk us through a little bit on that. What happened? Of course, the session ended, the bill lapsed. It'll have to be reintroduced. What was your rationale in getting behind it to become a co-sponsor? Because it came as a pleasant surprise to a lot of Indian Americans, I must say.
Well, it was a historical fact. We know that there was a targeting of Hindus in what is now Bangladesh. Of course, Muslims died as well, but that doesn't mean that Hindus weren't specifically targeted, and the violence was wrong. And that was a shameful moment where Nixon, because he had aligned with Pakistan to get to China, he wanted to detente with China to score political points in the United States and with the Soviet Union, abandons India, and that really pushes India more close to the Soviet Union. Before that, as you know, John F. Kennedy was very, very strongly in favor of India and came to India's assistance in the 1962 war. So I wanted to recognize the brutality in 71 against Hindus, but also the broader brutality against even Muslims and a lot of people. And India was completely in the right in that war and led to the creation of Bangladesh.
Thank you so much, sir. Now, I just want to ask you a question. America first versus nationalism. Aren't they both the same? I mean, if somebody says American interests are first, isn't that also being nationalistic? Why then is the word nationalism looked at in a way that, oh, this is, taking it back to Nazi times?
Well, I call myself a patriot. I call for economic patriotism. It's fine for, just like we value our families and we care for our families first, it's fine for America to care about our needs and our people as a first priority. That's the job of people who represent the country. But nationalism can turn ugly. That can turn into denying people who are immigrants who don't look like us. It can turn into an aggressive militarism. It can turn into a sense where they're in groups and excluded groups. So I prefer a patriotism that says we've got to look out for the American people, but we also want to be inclusive and engaged in the world.
Congressman Rowe, before you jumped into politics, you were a lawyer, and I think you were an intellectual property lawyer. Give us a little bit of your journey from the time you came out of college. What kind of issues did you take up as an intellectual property lawyer? And then, of course, the transition into politics.
Well, when I was a student at Chicago, in the University of Chicago, I worked on President Obama's very first campaign when he was running for the state Senate. And then when I came out to Silicon Valley, I practiced technology law at O'Melveny and Myers and Wilson Sonsini, representing a lot of technology.
Wilson Sonsini is a well-known name. Sonsini is a well-known name. Go ahead, sir. Yeah.
Represent a lot of technology startups, technology companies. O'Melveny and Myers is where Warren Christopher practiced when I was there.
Yes.
Former Secretary of State, and at the same time that I ran against the first Iraq War, against a very long time incumbent, because I was opposed to the United States decision to go to war in Iraq. I lost badly, but came to the attention of Speaker Pelosi and others. Then I helped President Obama when he get elected, Speaker Pelosi get elected. President Obama appointed me to be a Deputy Assistant Secretary of Commerce. I worked there to build American manufacturing, increase exports, actually led a trade mission to India during the President Obama's time, where I had the opportunity to meet Anand Mahindra and Mukesh Ambani and many other business leaders, because even then, India and the United States were seen as critical economic partners. Then I wrote a book on manufacturing, started teaching at Stanford in the economics department, and in 2016 won to represent Silicon Valley.
Wonderful, sir. Now I have a question for you. You were the co-chair of Bernie Sanders' campaign, and now you are very closely involved with the Biden campaign for 2024 and so on and so forth. So you've seamlessly, transitioned from one camp in Democrats, nothing wrong in that, to another one. How did you manage to do that seamless transition?
I was very proud to support Bernie Sanders because I believe college in America should be free. I don't think
I agree with you on that.
You should go to debt in thousands and thousands of dollars just to get an education. I believe that healthcare should be a right. I don't think that people should go into massive medical debt and have to pay thousands of dollars just to get healthcare. I believe that people should have a living wage. That's why I supported Senator Sanders for the agenda that he had to give economic security and dignity to all Americans, and to invest in healthcare and to invest in education. But the president won. He's done a very good job. It's important for our party to be unified around him. He's our leader. He's the incumbent president. And I'm going to be proud to help get young voters, progressive voters, and a lot of people behind him in 2024.
Now, one complaint that is laid on your door is that they say that some of the detractors you are quick to respond to, and to others you just ignore. And the example that is paid out is a particular person, loudmouth, who has been wishing death to your fellow Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy. And they say that, well, Congressman Rowe replies to him, but when I try to ask him a question, he never replies. I don't think it is done intentionally, but what is your thought process? I mean, this person now has actually taken aim at you.
Well, I try to engage with most people. I go on Fox News, I go on media, but I engage with people, of course, in the United States. And so I don't know if people are engaged overseas. We get so many requests for media interviews from England, from Australia, from India, from France. And what I say to people is, by and large, I try to focus on American media and then in my district. And so I think that's why I try to engage, and I try to give people the benefit of the doubt, and am open to criticism.
Now I want to take you back to something that is very close to your constituency and your district. In the last town hall meeting, which I had the honor of attending, you had made your point about SB 403 very clear. You said that you don't comment on state issues, number one. And second, you also added that you are against discrimination of any sort. Fair enough. My question to you is, now Oregon is planning a similar resolution and bringing something similar as a law. And in fact, they are finding some obscure statutes that essentially, sandbags anybody from even opposing it. And even in California, it most likely will pass. But see, now your stance about, not involving yourself with state issues, this issue is now beginning to, mushroom around the country. At what point do you think you'll change your stance and say, look, this doesn't make sense? Because there are already provisions in the American Constitution that cover these things. That's my point.
Well, I thought we saw the advocacy of the Indian American community, and in the form, I haven't followed the details, but in the form that now it may pass, it's not creating any special category, but just saying that caste discrimination is banned, which I believe it is banned under existing American law. There is no discrimination allowed on race, on gender, on sex, on caste. And so in my view, now the bill just clarifies that. But I am against any form of caste discrimination, race discrimination, religious discrimination. But I also don't think that people should be presumed guilty, as happened in the Cisco case, just because someone had a particular last name. And I met with Sundar and heard his story and think that he was treated unfairly. And that was, in fact, he was an atheist, he told me, and still he had this suit. So we have to make sure that people are treated fairly in the process.
Thank you so much, Congressman Rowe. Last question. How many times have you had a situation where you had to do the right thing, which is in terms of there's politically right and there is morally right? Have you had a dilemma of that sort, and how did you fall on that question? Last question.
Well, I don't think that the judgment of a morality can be divorced from the context. If you think, for example, the most favorite text in Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna is giving Arjuna advice and Arjuna is hesitant about whether he should kill other human beings, whether he should wage war against his own cousins. In the absence, one could have a rule that says, well, why would you want to kill? Why would you want to kill your cousins? But what Krishna says is duty has to consider all of the context to then make a decision about what is morally right. And so I think politics is the same thing. No one is a actor in a vacuum. You have to look at the totality of circumstances and then see what is your duty under that circumstance to do the best you can to move the world in a more just place. Now, I don't always get that right. Obviously, I'm a fallible person and fallible leader, but I don't believe that there's a distinction of pure morality and action required in the actual world in which we're living.
Thank you so much, Congressman Khanna. And it would be remiss of me if I don't mention this to our viewers, that you took a stand that was kind of contrarian to what most of the party was taking in terms of Twitter banning Donald Trump. You, in fact, engaged in conversation with 𝙒𝙖𝙧𝙤𝙪. I tip my hat to you, sir, because that was something that you could have just gone with the flow, but you still felt that it was important to kind of ask this person that, do you understand what you have set off? So to that extent, I really admire you, and I wish you all the best in your future endeavors. I'd like to see you as a senator, as something beyond that. Sky is the limit. And thank you very much for taking time out to talk to us.
Thank you. Thank you for your journalism. Thank you.
Namaskar.